Fellow baby boomers, where were you 50 years ago tonight? September 30th, 1960, ABC premiered TV's first animated primetime series, The Flintstones.
You think you know the Flintstones, bright colors, simple jokes, and a happy Stone Age suburb. But behind that cheerful theme song sits a show built on odd deals, quiet edits, and choices that would never pass today. From money that came through strange hands, to laughs recorded from people long gone, to one scene so dark it was quietly removed, Bedrock is not as simple as it looks. Let's crack open the quarry and find what the network never wanted you to notice. 20. Mob connections in production. During the early years of the show, there were steady rumors that some of the funding did not come through normal studio paths. People inside the industry later said that certain outside groups helped provide money for the work, though the exact reasons were never fully clear. These groups were not part of the usual television world, and their role brought a sense of uncertainty to the staff. A few names appeared on payroll sheets, even though the artists connected to those names were rarely, if ever, seen in the studio. Workers noticed this but chose not to speak, since it was clear that questions were not welcome. Distribution also had unusual guidance. A powerful union group handled many details of how the show reached stations across the country. They oversaw shipping, contracts, and even certain scheduling choices. Because of this, the studio had to work with them for nearly every new release. The arrangement was never fully explained, and the union's presence gave some employees the feeling that decisions were being made far above the usual chain of command. If you think this one is unbelievable, wait until you see the next one. 19. The Honeymooners lawsuit that almost destroyed everything. When the animated series first reached the public, many viewers noticed that its main characters looked and sounded much like the well-known couple from an older live-action show. The main man had a loud voice, quick temper, and bold ideas that often went wrong. His neighbor was mild, polite, and steady, just like the earlier show's side character. Even the stories followed a similar path, with small home problems turning into larger situations. Because of these likenesses, the creator of the older program began to think the new series had copied too closely. He met with advisors who told him he could bring a challenge against the new show. They believed he had a strong case due to the clear character and story similarities. For a short time, it seemed possible that the animated series might end before it had a real chance to build an audience. People inside the animation studio grew worried. They had already spent months drawing scenes, recording voices, and preparing future episodes. A dispute at that moment could have shut everything down. 18. Winston Cigarettes owned the first season. During the first season, the show had a strong sponsor that shaped many scenes. This sponsor sold a well-known tobacco product, and their support gave them influence over what appeared on screen. Because of this, the two main characters were often shown taking breaks to use the sponsor's product while talking about the taste and the quality. These moments were not placed outside the story. They were part of the scenes, blended into the middle of normal action, as if they were everyday tasks. In the early opening, the two characters even stepped away from their chores to stand behind the house and enjoy the product together. At the time, this was seen as a normal style of promotion, but later viewers were surprised to see such material inside what became a family show. Years later, when reruns began, editors had to remove or cover many of these moments. Artists used careful frame-by-frame work to erase the product from the characters' hands and change the shots so they no longer showed it. This process took time because many scenes had to be adjusted. The early season became an example of how sponsor demands could shape animated storytelling and how later edits had to reshape that history for new audiences. 17. The show was almost called The Flagstones. Before the series reached television, the creators planned to use the title The Flagstones. They used this name through much of the early work, including planning, art drafts, voice sessions, and printed promotional sheets. At the time, the name seemed fitting for a family living in a Stone Age setting. However, only a short time before the show was set to air, the team learned that a comic strip already used a very similar name. Because of this, there was concern that the two projects would be confused or that the makers of the comic strip might raise objections. With little time left, the studio had to act quickly. The title was changed to The Flintstones just weeks before release. This sudden shift created a long list of problems. Some voice actors had already spoken the old name in several lines, so the team had to re-record parts of scenes. Music cues that used the earlier title had to be rewritten. Printed materials such as posters, ads, and sample merchandise were already made. So many of these items were thrown out or redone. Although the change caused stress and extra work, it shaped the identity the show became known for. The final title had a stronger sound, a clearer link to the main family, and a name that stayed with audiences for decades. 16. Barney's voice died, and nobody noticed. During the early run of the show, the actor who voiced Barney faced a serious car accident that left him unable to work for some time. His voice was important to the series, and the studio had episodes that needed to be finished. To keep the show on schedule, another skilled voice actor stepped in. He studied the tone and rhythm of the original voice and tried to match it as closely as possible. Because the sound was already familiar to fans, the studio hoped that viewers would not notice the change. While this stand-in recorded new lines, the original actor began a slow recovery in the hospital. Even though he could not move easily or stand, he was determined to return to the role. The studio arranged special recording equipment so he could speak while lying in bed. A microphone was placed above him, and the team worked around his limited strength. He delivered short lines, laughs, and simple phrases at first, improving little by little. Most people watching the show at home never realized that two different voices were used during this time. The style and humor stayed the same, and the switch happened quietly. When the original actor finally returned fully, the transition was smooth. The event later became an example of how much effort went into keeping the show steady, even during unexpected challenges. 15. The laugh track came from dead people. The show used a laugh track to create the feeling of a live audience, but the recordings were not new. The sound team used a set of old laughter clips that had been made years earlier during the 1950s. These clips came from real audiences who had attended stage shows and radio programs. By the time the animated series aired, many of the people whose voices were recorded were no longer living. Still, their laughter continued to fill scenes, episode after episode. The sound machine that held these clips allowed engineers to play short bursts, long waves, or gentle chuckles whenever a moment needed extra energy. Because the tracks were used so often, the same laughs repeated across many episodes. Regular viewers sometimes felt they recognized the patterns even if they could not say why. The repeated sounds became part of the show's identity, giving comedy scenes a steady rhythm. Inside the studio, some workers called the device unusual because it carried voices from another time. But it was also practical. New recordings would have required a full audience and more studio time, which the budget could not support. The old clips were already neatly prepared, easy to control, and familiar to sound editors. 14. Pebbles ruined the original dynamic. When the show first began, it focused on the daily lives of two adult couples. The stories were built around simple problems, work trouble, neighborhood plans, and light arguments. The tone was steady and aimed at older viewers who enjoyed humor about grown-up life. The writers understood this style well, and they shaped each episode around situations that adults could relate to. For a while, this approach worked, and the show found a strong place on television. Everything changed when a baby character was added. The new arrival shifted the center of the series. With a child in the house, the writers had to create new types of stories. Stories about bottles, naps, babysitting, and home issues connected to raising a child. These ideas pulled the show away from the original plan. Some viewers who enjoyed the earlier tone felt the new direction was less appealing. Ratings began to fall as the audience changed, and the creative staff felt pressure to keep the show lively, even as the material grew harder to shape. The writers also struggled because they had not planned for long-term child-focused episodes. Many felt that the new character narrowed the show's range and limited the kind of humor they could use. They often said it made the series feel softer and less bold than before. While the new character did help with merchandise and public attention, it also created a divide between the early seasons and the later ones. The shift became one of the clearest turning points in the show's history. 13. The Great Gazoo was network sabotage. Late in the series, a new character appeared who did not fit the world the show had built over many seasons. This small, green figure arrived from another place, spoke in a sharp tone, and often stood above the main characters giving advice or warnings. His powers and style were very different from the grounded, everyday tone the show had used from the start. Because of this, many viewers felt the show had changed too quickly and not for the better. Behind the scenes, the studio faced rising costs and growing pressure from the network. The series was expensive to make, and the network wanted a new direction that might lower the show's value and allow them to move away from their contract. The new character was brought in as part of that push. The writers were told to include him even though he did not fit the world they had shaped. They did what they could, but the result felt out of place. The sudden shift confused longtime fans. Ratings began to fall, and the heart of the show seemed to fade. Many people later looked back on this moment as the point when the series lost its balance. The character appeared in only a small set of episodes, yet his presence marked the beginning of the end for the original run. 12. Fred and Wilma were TV's first married couple shown in the same bed. At the time the show aired, most television programs followed strict rules about how married couples could be shown. Live-action series almost always placed husbands and wives in separate beds, even when the story clearly focused on family life. These rules were considered standard and were rarely challenged. Because of this, viewers were surprised when the animated series chose a different path. Fred and Wilma were shown sleeping in the same bed, something no other married couple on American television had done. The choice was bold for the period, yet it passed without major dispute at first. Some people believe that because the series took place in a distant age, the usual rules did not apply. Others felt that the animated style made the scene seem softer and less direct than a live-action version. Whatever the reason, the show became the first to break a long-standing limit. This moment opened the door for later programs. It showed that audiences could handle scenes that reflected real family life in a simple, natural way. While the choice may seem small now, it marked a significant shift in how television could present married characters. The scene remained a quiet but important milestone in the history of TV storytelling. 11. The animation was massively recycled. The series was created on a tight budget, which meant the artists had to find many ways to save time and money. One of the most common methods was reusing animation. Instead of drawing every action from scratch, the team repeated run cycles, walking loops, and even small gestures across many episodes. These movements were placed over new backgrounds to make them appear fresh, even though the drawings were the same. Background artwork was also reused. A single street or room might appear in dozens of episodes with only slight color changes. This made production faster, since creating detailed backgrounds was one of the most time-consuming jobs in animation. Mouth shapes were kept to a small set, so the characters could speak lines without needing new drawings for every sound. This limited the range of facial motion but kept costs under control. Even props followed the same pattern. Items like tools, dishes, and Stone Age devices appeared again and again, no matter the story. The team used these shortcuts because weekly television animation was far more demanding than short theatrical cartoons. Hold tight to your stone sofa, because this next one is on another level. 10. Fred Flintstone was genuinely abusive. In the earliest seasons, the lead character was written with a stronger and rougher personality than most viewers remember today. He often raised his voice, acted without thinking, and made choices that placed stress on his home life. In many scenes, he spoke in a sharp tone, dismissed concerns from others, or hid small problems instead of facing them directly. These moments were presented as humor at the time, but they made his character far less gentle than in later years. Some episodes also showed him handling money matters in ways that caused trouble for his family. He sometimes kept plans to himself or made decisions that affected the household without explaining them. The show used these actions to set up jokes and misunderstandings, but the tone could feel tense when compared with the lighter mood of later seasons. When the series entered long-term reruns, many of the harsher scenes were edited or removed. The creators wanted the show to appeal to a broader family audience, so they softened the lead character's personality. Over time, he became more thoughtful, more supportive, and more focused on light-hearted problems rather than heavy conflicts. This shift helped the show remain popular for decades, but it also left many early episodes feeling very different from the later ones viewers remember most. 9. Sponsors required real product equivalents. During the show's early seasons, sponsors played a major role in shaping what viewers saw on screen. Many episodes were expected to include versions of real products, changed only enough to fit the Stone Age setting. The writers had to find simple ways to place these items into everyday scenes so they felt natural, even when the products did not truly belong in a prehistoric world. Sometimes this meant giving modern items new names made from stone, rock, or bone. Other times, it meant creating a short moment inside a scene where a character used or talked about the product. These placements were not rare. Some episodes carried more than one product reference, each tied to a sponsor who wanted attention during broadcast. The writers and artists often had to adjust stories to make room for these items, even if the story did not call for them. A household scene might shift to a quick moment where a character praised a food item, or a workplace scene might pause so a character could handle a tool that matched a sponsor's request. These requirements sometimes shaped the tone of an episode, but they also showed how early television relied heavily on sponsor support. The show became one of the clearest examples of how advertising and storytelling mixed during that time. 8. The theme song contained cursing. When the familiar theme song was first recorded, the process involved many takes. The lead voice actor had to repeat the same line again and again, trying to match the timing, tone, and rhythm that the music required. After several attempts, he grew tired and slipped into a brief outburst during one of the takes. The remark was short and partly covered by the music, but it remained on the original recording. Because the production team worked under strict deadlines, they chose the take that flowed best overall, even though the outburst was faintly present in the background. At the time, the mixing tools were limited, and removing the sound without harming the rest of the track was difficult. As a result, the remark stayed in the final version, buried beneath the instruments and chorus. For many years, viewers never noticed anything unusual. The theme played quickly, and the music covered most of the stray's sound. Only decades later, when the song was remastered and separated into layers for modern audio work, did technicians hear the faint remark hidden inside the vocal track. It became a small piece of trivia about how fast-paced recording sessions could leave behind unintended details, even in one of the most well-known opening songs in television history. 7. Dino was originally a talking character. In the earliest version of the show, Dino was meant to be far more than a friendly pet. In the pilot, he spoke in full sentences, showed clear thoughts, and acted almost like another member of the household. His voice was lively, and he used quick comments to react to the main character's plans. This version of Dino helped move scenes forward, offering ideas or small jokes that fit well with the flow of the story. However, when the pilot was reviewed, the executives felt that a talking animal might distract from the main characters. They wanted the focus to stay on the two families and their daily problems. They also believed that a simple pet would make the show easier to follow and easier to market. Because of this, they asked the creators to change Dino's role before the regular episodes were made. The creative team rewrote Dino as a playful pet who responded with barks, jumps, and simple sounds instead of speech. This choice required new animation and new voice sessions, but it shaped the version of Dino that viewers came to know. Over time, the non-speaking Dino became one of the show's most familiar figures, known for his excited greetings and loyal behavior. The early talking version disappeared, remembered only by a few who saw the first test material. 6. Betty Rubble was designed as eye candy. From the start, the artists planned for Betty to have a look that set her apart from the other characters. Her design used smoother lines, softer shapes, and more detail than most of the cast. While other characters often had simple movements, Betty was given more careful animation. Her walk cycles used extra frames, which made her steps appear lighter and more fluid. Even small gestures, such as turning her head or lifting her hand, were drawn with more care. The studio wanted her to have a friendly charm that would draw attention whenever she entered a scene. Her outfit was shaped to be simple but appealing, and the color choices helped her stand out in group shots. The goal was to give the show a character who brought a lighter and warmer feeling to moments between the families. Voice work also helped shape her presence. Her lines often carried a gentle tone, and her laugh was recorded to sound bright and welcoming. All these choices gave her a distinct place in the cast. While other characters were louder or more dramatic, Betty brought calm energy and steady support. Over time, she became one of the show's most recognizable figures, remembered for her friendly nature and the polished look that animation teams worked hard to create. 5. Bedrock was racially segregated. In the early seasons, the town shown in the series had a limited mix of people. Most of the characters looked and acted in similar ways, and the setting rarely showed families or individuals with different backgrounds. This lack of variety was partly due to the habits of television at the time, when shows often kept casts simple to avoid any chance of conflict with stations in different regions. As a result, Bedrock appeared to be a place with only one type of community. For several years, new characters were added only when the story needed them, and even then, they were designed to match the style already established. When the show finally tried to introduce characters who were meant to represent different groups, these attempts were brief and not handled with much care. A few of these characters appeared only for short moments, and their design and behavior were based on old ideas rather than real understanding. Because of this, viewers looking back at the early seasons can see how limited the world of Bedrock was. The town did not grow in the way a real community would. Later versions of the series and related projects made more effort to include a wider range of characters, but the original run remained shaped by the choices of its time. 4. The self-ending episode that aired once. In the early run of the series, there was an episode that took on a much heavier tone than the others. It first appeared in 1961 and showed the main character facing a deep low point after losing his job. Feeling lost and unsure of what to do next, he wandered to the edge of a large quarry. The scene suggested he was thinking of giving up completely. He even wrote a short note on a stone tablet, explaining his worry and regret, before his friend hurried to reach him. The moment was long and very serious, unlike the usual light style of the show. The friend tried to calm him, reminding him that help was still possible and that the problem could be solved. The scene lasted several minutes, showing real fear and concern instead of humor. This tone made the episode stand out sharply from the rest of the series. After the first broadcast, many viewers felt the scene was too heavy for an animated program that was known for simple family stories. Because of this response, the episode was removed from later schedules and was not shown again on regular television. Over time, it became a rare piece of series history, mentioned only in old reports and by people who remembered seeing it during its single airing. 3. The show predicted its own death. The final episode of the series, titled The Gravelberry Pie King, carried a tone that felt different from most earlier episodes. While the story followed the usual light troubles of the main character, careful viewers noticed small signs that suggested the show was reaching its conclusion. These signs were placed quietly in the background, in short lines, and in brief actions that did not draw too much attention at first. Several moments in the episode involved the characters speaking in ways that sounded like farewells. The lead character made comments about things coming to an end, and another character spoke about the years they had spent together. These lines fit the story, yet also worked as gentle messages to the audience. Background art included small details as well. Certain objects were arranged to form shapes that looked like waving hands or spelled short words when viewed closely. Some crowd scenes included drawings of the artists who worked on the show, placed there as a final nod to their time with the series. These touches created a quiet layer beneath the main plot. 2. Wilma's voice actress fought real sexism. The actress who gave Wilma her voice worked on the show from the beginning, yet she did not receive the same level of credit or pay as many of her male co-workers. In the early seasons, her name did not appear in the credits at all, even though her character was one of the central parts of the show. She spoke many lines, carried emotional moments, and helped shape the personality of the series, but her work was not fully recognized. Her pay was also lower than that of others who had smaller roles. She asked the studio to correct this, but the changes came slowly, and she still did not receive long-term payments for the many times the show was replayed. Even though her voice became closely linked to the main family, she did not benefit when the show grew in popularity. Despite these challenges, she continued to voice Wilma for many years. She returned for specials, films, and new projects connected to the series. Her steady work helped keep Wilma's character consistent and familiar to audiences across generations. Only later did many viewers learn how much she had contributed and how little she had been rewarded for it. Her story has since been remembered as an example of how important workers can be overlooked, even when their work becomes a defining part of a major show. Don't leave just yet, because our number one pick is here. It will make you rethink the show. 1. The Lost Adult Flintstones Pilot. Before the well-known family version of the series was created, An early pilot was produced under the working title The Flintstones. This pilot was made before the show's final direction was chosen, and it aimed for a far more mature tone than the one viewers later came to know. The scenes in this early version showed the characters in settings and situations meant for adults rather than families. The humor was sharper, the talk was heavier, and the daily life of the main couple was shown with far more tension than what appeared in the final series. The pilot also included social settings that were not used again once the show shifted toward a general audience. These scenes made the world feel more like a real town for grown-ups, rather than the bright and simple version that later aired each week. Because the tone no longer fit the plan for a broad family program, the studio chose not to release the pilot to the public. Over time, only a few people claimed to have seen this early material, and the studio kept it stored away. It became a piece of lost television history, discussed in small circles and remembered as an example of how different the show might have been if the creators had followed their first idea instead of moving toward a lighter style. And that wraps up The Flintstones, 1960, 20 Weird Facts. If you enjoyed this trip back to Bedrock, please like the video and share your favorite fact in the comments. Do not forget to subscribe for more classic cartoon stories and hidden details from old shows. When you are ready for the next deep dive, click on the video shown on your screen and keep the nostalgia going.